to Existential Dudes podcast.
You changed the thing up. Ooh.
Just slightly. Just a bit of flavor.
Flavor?
Mm-hmm.
How spicy would you say?
Habanero.
That's pretty spicy.
Mm-hmm. I can handle it a little more than you.
Okay, let's move on. Yes.
This guy can barely handle salt.
Yes, we all know that the strongest spice that I can endure is salt, maybe a little pepper. Cinnamon works. Cinnamon's good in small quantities. So where are we? The podcast.
Introduce the topic.
So today we are discussing the dehumanization of social media. So first of all, what do we mean by that?
The best way to define it is the phenomenon that happens as a result of being on social media that is much more difficult to achieve in the real world. And as a result of the way social media is constructed, it tolerates treating people in a way that you wouldn't treat them normally, or view people in certain ways that aren't necessarily, quote, human.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, dehumanization is exactly what it sounds like. It's invalidating the humanity of another individual. Think World War II, the incidents that occurred with that kind of stuff, and things like treating another human as if they are not not even equal, but not even someone of the same species. So some really dramatic stuff here, and it's a little bit of a clickbaity title, but it's still, I think we can explain why that is the case.
Well, I kind of wanted to take it in a slightly different direction.
Yeah.
And emphasize the way in which social media focuses, it almost demands you focus your attention on yourself, or you'll get lost in everything social media has to offer. So I think a good way to start this is to talk about the idea of everyone having a network of people. This is whether you're connected to social media or we're talking about a time before social media, everyone had a network of people that was a certain size, that was people that they know and impacted. And what happens is when you take this to multiple degrees out, meaning like I might know 100 people across a 10-year span, mm-hmm. But each of those 100 people will also know 100 or 200, however many people you want to say. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the actions you take and the behavior you manifest often has a bigger effect than you might assume. You're always taught about the butterfly effect as a child, and it's usually meant in a good way. Like, mm-hmm. If you do something positive, someone else will pass it on, and that's true. But I think, especially in regards to what we're going to talk about today, it manifests in a much different way. So let's take a micro example to start out. This one has nothing to do with social media whatsoever. Let's say you, Andrew, has a very bad day.
Me, Andrew, yes.
Yes. And you're going to let that negativity manifest in your behavior. Mm-hmm. Let's say you personally interact with 13 people throughout the day. And we'll take interacting to mean any kind of casual interaction, conversation, something like that. I'm intentionally excluding close family and friends, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. But let's say 4 of these 13 individuals are negatively affected by your behavior. The other however many, the other 9.
Yes.
Math.
I need my calculator. Where's my T84?
Math right there. The other 9, they think, well, he was in a bad mood, but that's not gonna get to me. But for whatever reason, these 4 people, it just got to them, and now they're in a bad mood as well. Now, what happens when they go and interact with 15 other people? You're gonna have that same thing, and suddenly whatever bad thing happened to you that caused you to be in this bad mood, and the decision you made, whether conscious or simply due to a lack of discipline, as Andrew very often exercises.
I have a strong lack of discipline.
Yeah. I can't even say that with a straight
I'm
face.
a unregimented, off the wall, mumbo jumbo kind of man, falling apart. Well, that one's kind of true, but nonetheless, anyway, go on.
But the point I'm trying to make with this is these negative attitudes or the way you act can very quickly snowball in a way that you might not have foreseen. So let's expand this to social media really quick, which... What?
I have an additional thing here we can throw in.
Please.
So, what you're describing with this negative butterfly effect, I can't come up with a good name for it, but we'll come up with one later. It is exactly what...
The dragonfly effect.
The moth effect?
Moths
are pretty
lamp.
No.
Sorry.
Constructed around it. Anyways, this moth effect is exactly what occurs in things like politics and confounding issues, resulting in tribalism. Episode 15, go listen to it if you haven't. In that, for example, a politician presents an opinion on something, or a vote goes a certain way, or an event happens in DC a certain way. Everyone will have their own opinion of that, but more often than not, we look to these social influencers, to use the unfortunate term, to guide many of us into how we should accept that event. This is why so many times you get the trope of conservative reporter goes and finds a bunch of, quote, socialist high school students and asks them about socialism and they don't know anything. Or the same thing for extremely conservative students who don't know anything about their position. It's the case of they've been affected negatively in the greater scheme, but positively in their minds about an opinion, even if they don't have a full, complete understanding of it. And this is something I've certainly suffered from. You and I certainly have. Actually, I've experienced it from you in a small part. But I try to... It's really important to be able to recognize that. Fortunately, I think you and I have begun to recognize that, so we're out of that phase.
Yeah.
But it's a very dangerous moment, because at that point you're manipulative, or you're manipulatable.
You're a bit ahead of me, because I was about to go to the macro example of this, where it, especially as it relates to social media and celebrities and things like that. And the thing about social media, not only is it bigger because you have the potential to reach a much wider audience than just the people you physically interact with during the day, but and we're definitely going to get into this later on, it kind of emboldens this self-centered behavior and the emotional decision making that usually leads to that negativity manifesting.
Yes, this is exactly where the everything is a cause idea comes from.
Mm-hmm.
In that a lot of these social influencers and notable individuals who have the position to speak on things or have a public position, not necessarily the authority or the ethos to speak on something, they use their platform to present an issue or a situation that needs to be resolved in their minds. And there's a lot to be said about that, and that's a lot of dividing issues, so we may not cover that today. But it does, I will certainly concede and address the fact that the individuals who do that, in the minds of the people who agree with them, they garner immense respect and, in a way, familiarity,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps even philia, in a way. While those who disagree with them disagree with them stronger, and disagree with the things they create and the things they do on the principle that they don't want to align themselves with that individual because they don't like their positions on things,
Mm-hmm.
which should not be the case, because then you're attributing someone's beliefs to their identity, which should never be the case.
Yeah.
As we've discussed many times. Episode 1, 3,
I don't know.
2, maybe 4.
Have we ever talked about values?
A little in episode 1.
Because those kind of do align with character, with who you are, I would say.
All right, so quick constructive derailment here. The way I've seen it and tried to break it down in my mind, when addressing someone's character, the core thing to look at is the values and the way they act. The values, in a way, kind of affecting how they act. So it mostly is simply the values.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, their values connect to their beliefs, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
I can value personal time, I can value patience, I can value life, but I don't necessarily have to support certain causes or certain things for other reasons, which is where reasoning comes in. We discussed in the episode about our election day episode, we discussed the difference between a republic and a democracy, in that a republic uses written values to establish rules. Well, uses values of the society to establish rules which then can be applied. Those rules aren't the values, but they're the principles by which the country is run. So in a similar way, in the way that I function my own self, yes, I'm just a series of CPU units.
Got it.
I have my values, and my values guide my quote set of principles, which are the rules by which I act and decide things. And from those principles, I address how I see different positions. So that, in effect, it's a way of avoiding an entirely emotional response from values. And forcing me to look at, okay, how much of the value am I looking at here, and how much of the reasoning behind it am I looking at here?
That was very constructive derailing.
Thank you. I don't know, have we done values?
I don't think we have.
We might need to do that more in depth sometime. Write it down.
I want to go back to this idea of emotional decision making, especially as it relates to a certain decorum that you're expected to exercise when you're in the real world, let's say, as opposed to the internet and social media.
Mm-hmm.
In a public setting, it is considered inappropriate to make decisions based purely on emotion. Yet on social media, what we see, especially from young people my age, people I know, not to call anyone out, but
we're calling them out. That's exactly what we're doing.
we're calling them out, not by name.
But we're absolutely addressing the action, because we both have the same position on this.
But it becomes if someone feels the urge to post something almost always about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
almost always about some temporary emotion that they're feeling, it would be completely frowned upon to ever do anything like comparable to that in public. Yet on social media, it's completely tolerated and I would argue encouraged. And I've fallen into the trap before of, I guess, humoring these people and asking them what's wrong, when I should have looked at when they posted this thing, because if that was 2 hours later, the emotion has passed and they're fine now.
Mm-hmm.
But what they said still remains. Whether it was something nasty about a person or something deeply disturbing about themselves, like, there's quite a few examples of people diagnosing themselves with things, making desperate accusations at the world or things like that. And that's where I think one of the most dangerous aspects of social media lies. And it, in the same way, this emotionalness and the self-centeredness sort of go hand in hand in this part of it.
So you've approached it here from the position of why they, well, how it appears to see this emotion, this intense emotion, and I liked the word desperate there because so much of it does come across as desperate. And to break it down here and answer my own question of how does social media as a medium force that to be what occurs? And well, it's quite simple. So we discussed last episode, the purpose of emotions in argument is to try and get empathy towards you and try and get someone to move in a certain way, and most typically it's through the call to action. Whenever I write something inspirational, write some kind of speech, or even in academic essays or proposals I've written, you read the very large one I wrote. At the very conclusion of that, I use a very pathetic appeal, pathetic meaning affectionate and trying to garner emotions, in order to try and convince the reader at that last point after reading all of the logic. Keep that in your mind. Now, with that in mind, the reason that's done is to get that maximum effect. This is why the famous televangelists that we talked about in episode 5, which were these famous Protestant preachers who televised their shows and talked a lot about damnation. You're familiar with the Second Great Awakening and the First Great Awakening with Robert Whitefield.
Been a while.
Nonetheless, this dude he was a preacher, and he was an extremely fiery minister, famous for his fire and brimstone speeches, and that he would arouse the audience in fear almost, well, fear entirely, and get them to feel these extreme emotions only to rein them back in to try to do a little bit of reasoning. And the reason he did that was to get the maximum convincing power. Because truth be told, emotions will convince you so much stronger than logic in a moment.
Yeah. But
as soon, like you were saying, the reason you don't try and address that post later on is because that emotion's gone. If they try to reason with it, if you try to reason with it, they'll see
usually whatever they thought was the problem is also gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it was so tied to that emotion. Mm-hmm. That's why what I normally do now is I simply ask the person, is this really something that you need help dealing with? Or is this just an emotional thing? Or another thing that's worth trying is wait a while and then ask them, what was that? And if they're like, oh, it's fine, I got it taken care of, then you know it wasn't genuine. It was just a impulse based purely on emotion, and social media gave them the outlet to express that.
And the point I was getting at with that long explanation is that the medium of social media, as it is, being the message itself of immediacy, short thoughts, and picture and imagery based things, what else would you use to try and argue with someone than sharp imagery? And if you're limited to words, sharp words. This is why you get directly into this is where clickbait comes from, truth be told. Yeah. In that it's a single image you have to sell the entire video. What else are you going to do but put the most explicit thing you can on there?
Yeah.
Which was a dangerous thing a year or two ago when there was a lot of unfortunate things appearing on those videos. But the fact that is the medium and the medium is the message, these individuals, particularly young individuals who cannot affect the world in many ways yet, the only thing they can do is use as much emotion as they can to garner support. Mm-hmm. This is why children activists yell a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting to look at. It's not argumentative. It's fascinating. It's entertainment. Mm-hmm. Which is upsetting. Because certainly, yes, these individuals are addressing these issues, and many of them are real, genuine issues. But if someone's yelling at you day by day, you're going to stop listening. Mm-hmm. And why should you? They look like an idiot. Because all they're doing is maxing out the emotion, and just with a tolerance effect.
And when someone is arguing based purely on emotion, there's very little you can do at that point to rebut anything. Mm-hmm. Or lest you be deemed by society to be denying their feelings, denying their emotions, mm-hmm. denying their humanity.
Mm-hmm. This is exactly why I refuse to debate topical things in person. And will only debate them unless I'm with an individual who lets me finish my thoughts, such as you, most of the time. Even if you do, you usually give me some good stuff anyway, so it's fine. But I refuse to do that, and will only do it through written, patiently written, revised.
Oh, yeah.
And researched argument.
I love that stuff.
That they read the entire thing.
I love that stuff. I've done it. The thing about that is it's...
No one reads it.
No, yeah. One, no one reads it. Two, there's never... Since there's not a defined winner, like there's no gotcha moment, it's very easy for an argument to be left inconclusive, even if both people think they've won. In that in-person setting, it's much more apparent because of the physical tells of like shame, like I'm in a corner, I've lost, my argument doesn't hold water. So, I don't know where I was going with that.
To be bluntly honest, it feels incredible to put someone in a corner, but it feels incredibly incredible when you put them in a corner of argument, particularly when you loop their own logic around them. And what that does is it demonstrates, it's going to sound very arrogant, but superior intellect. And in some cases, wit. But encircling someone's argument is not encircling them in a joke. Which, unfortunately, look at any presidential debate in the past 30 years. What does every newscaster put on it? Who won and what zinger got it? Mm-hmm. And it's usually a line reel.
And
it's usually a line reel of events in it. the best example of this, this year, the vice presidential debate, there was a very comical incident with a fly appearing.
Yeah.
What was the star of the debate? Who won the debate? What caused the current Vice President Pence to lose all of his authority? A fly? Yes. Argument? No. And I think, and what were all of the documents about that debate about? The fly. Mm-hmm. And how the fly caused the win, which...
Well, what else can you focus on when they only have 90 seconds to answer any kind of question? Like,
and what are you supposed to deliver other than a zinger in 90 seconds?
Yeah. We've talked about it before in our fascination with late 1800s.
Good job, you got there.
Discourse. In these, specifically the Lincoln Douglas debates, where common everyday people would come out and watch these 6-7 hour long debates where there was an hour for opening points, half an hour for rebuttal, then the other person would take a turn. And
yeah, these individuals had hours of their own. They basically effectively gave a speech, and then the other person argued against it. In other words, what was occurring was someone was reading an essay. Mm-hmm. The other person was coming up with an essay on the spot to counter them mm-hmm. with typically written down notes ahead of time, and then the two would debate in person back and forth. If maybe not even back and forth.
Well,
it was not.
Wasn't it usually that they would debate maybe back and forth, but it would be like in longer intervals of time.
Certainly. I would argue the minimum interval is 10 minutes.
Yeah.
At least per person with no interruptions. But
Andrew, for someone to talk for 10 minutes, they have to actually know 10 minutes worth of content on what they're talking about. You can't expect people to do that.
Oh, no, I can't. That's why I can't. And that is exactly why this podcast is so wonderful, because I get to sit here for usually an hour, sometimes 2 hours, and just talk about and discuss and debate in a lively, moderately fun manner, and also have a great friendship in doing it. And I think...
Ditto.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the purpose of a debate is to prove the other person wrong, or at least convince the audience of something, the reader of something. But truth be told, in what a debate has become, I do not think that should be the purpose anymore. This is why I am always reluctant to use the word argument when describing something like this podcast, because the vast majority of individuals will see argument as a fight. Mm-hmm. Because I try to draw the very stark line there, because an argument is something, in my mind, well, by definition, is something that is about contending points and is reasoned.
Yeah.
While a fight is, here we go again, emotional. And that's why I'm always afraid to use it, and that's why I most often refer to debates as discourse or discussions.
Yes. Because
at that point, it at least paints it in the light of working together to come to a common point. However...
Hence podcasts in general.
Exactly.
And their growing popularity, because people are tired of...
Amen.
The alternative.
Vote.
What?
What? No, I was... Okay. I was tagging onto that, but it wasn't funny. Sorry, I was trying to get the zinger to win today's podcast.
I'm sure the commentary channels that cover us will be sure to get that one in there. In the highlight reel.
The commentary... Are there commentary channels that listen to podcasts? Is that a thing?
I don't know. It would take too long.
It would take way too long. Let's make that.
Yes. Instead of coming up with our own ideas, we can just criticize other people's ideas in a long... And all the time is already built in because you're watching a 4-hour podcast.
A long 4... So what we do is take every sentence and build an episode from it. Wait, that's exactly what happened with... That's Kozar.
that's kind of what we do all the time. We like introduce these discussions in private and then episode right there.
The complexity episode, I think episode 11.
Yeah, it happened from me just sending you a video.
Yeah, Luke literally sent me a video and he did send me some text and his theory, as he put it, and I responded quickly. And then after I sent that back, I think the simultaneous both of us sent. Wait, podcast. I was like, we need to stop. It's because we both wrote that stuff and we're like, this is amazing, and you can tell because that episode, we are very much into it, and it's a really good one. We'll definitely have to revisit that. I need to read some more of his stuff because he's not interesting to watch.
I have more stuff on that topic as well that I've been itching to send you, but I don't think it's the right time because you're employed now.
I am.
Andrew is employed now. He has joined the workforce.
I am employed. I have joined the workforce, dropping my socialist ties, joining the capitalist mantra of the world.
Working for pennies.
I am working for pennies. Every once in a while I get a penny tip. It's pretty cool. I've only broken things a couple times. And now, while we reboot and think about where we were, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. Literally no one. They, of course, provide us with nothing, and many of you have heard of them before. And some of you perhaps even have searched them up online, and yes, in fact, they do not exist. But you know what does exist?
Our merch! Go down to the description, click that link, it'll send you to some beautifully made merch that is wonderful. It has all of our signature quotes and phrases, all the jokes from season 1 of this podcast.
They are pretty fun. They're pretty comfortable. Luke and I both have one. The photo on Instagram is of the two of us wearing them gleefully. So certainly, if you're interested, check them out. If you order now, they will still be... Well, hold on. They will still be in... They will get here prior to Christmas, probably. Don't count me on that, but I'm pretty sure they will because it's a couple weeks. So certainly check it out before it's too late, and keep an eye out for the season 20.
Yeah.
Season 2. Two.
Episode 20.
Episode 1.
Episode 20 will be good.
11 through 20, yes. We really should have done like episode 0 through 9 and then 10 through 19. We could have been one of those people.
Episode 0?
Yeah, because then it like the seasons line up with the numbers, and then like 10 is episode
0 meaning...
Wait. No, because that would be season 2. That'd be like season 0 then?
Stop.
Or the preseason? Spring training.
And then episode 9 would be the big thing.
Right. I do like the big numbers. It's dramatic.
Yeah, it has to end in a 0.
Alright, when we get to episode 100, we'll do it just for you.
We're way off track.
Where were we? But yes, keep your eyes out. Episode 20, our Christmas special, will be very exciting. Luke and I are... I want to say seething. Seething is the entirely wrong word. Boiling with extreme happiness for the things we're going to get to do. Where were we?
Oh, we were talking about social media, loosely at least.
All right, anonymity.
Yes. I think this is the chief factor of what results in the dehumanization of people on social media. The obvious example that comes to mind here is how should I say, sad, pathetic men who prey on women and girls online because they're anonymous.
I mean, I was going to run with pedophile, but
yeah,
we can go the other way around.
What isn't that what I just said?
Yeah. I was just redefining it for comedic effect. I'm doing the zingers, man. It's my job today.
Okay.
But yeah, the most often I see the phrase "no filter" or "I have no filter," which I know individuals who have no filter, and it's an interesting characteristic to have that, or just to act that way, although I have some reservations towards that. But I find it interesting that many people, as soon as they reach a charactered account online, they take on a persona and a facade which allows them to act in ways they never would as an individual, which many of us are experienced with. And it's not even limited to young individuals. It really applies to everyone I know and everyone I've seen on the internet, from government officials down to children.
I had a point and I completely lost it.
There.
You were talking for too long.
I'm sorry.
Keep going.
The other part to consider here is when you're anonymous, it's much easier to say yes to things. It's a lot easier to bandwagon onto things and causes. This is why change.org is a thing.
If I get sent one more petition for anything.
Folks, petitions, unless they're literally written out, rarely do anything. The last petition to do anything was in the 1970s, I believe. And it was a mile-long piece of paper in Washington, D.C. And you can see why that had an effect. But when you're online and it takes only a click, maybe filling in your name, it's much easier to...
And you can always check the box, my name will appear with this petition. Otherwise, you're not even your name, you're just a number at that point. And you don't even have...
How do bots apply to that then? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I refuse to sign any change.org or any online petition, just because it carries no weight, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, some of the causes should be addressed and petitions should occur for them. And of course, in the United States, it's a right to do that petitioning. But when the only group that knows about the petition are the petition signers, I think you missed a part.
Yeah.
Because a large portion of the right to petition, the right of assembly, is the visual, noticeable action of it.
And another thing, just to clarify, private organizations are under no obligation to accept or accommodate your petition.
Nope.
You have a right to petition the government, because the government should be accountable to the people.
Yeah. This is interesting. Another issue that occurs very often is an online lynch mob. Which...
Would this be comparable to doxing someone, releasing their address, and then a mob goes, and then people physically go to their residence and try and assault them?
That's a whole separate issue, but
okay.
But there's a difference in what you're getting at there. So when someone is online and when you're online and having that anonymity, and even when your face is associated with the profile and your people can show you your tweets or Instagram posts or whatever, it's very common to throw slurs or attacks at individuals for things that occurred. The best example of this, and not addressing any position in relation to it, was the F Trump movement that occurred 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe even still this year. In that it was...
Let's be honest, did that ever really change?
No, it didn't change. In that...
Isn't there a song about it or
there
something?
is. Yes. In that it was a movement almost, and almost kind of a fad, in a way that it was kind of cool to put it on your posts. Which I have a whole discussion to be had here about the decorum of putting that. And also there's a part of it is the right of speech, so okay, it's fine, I don't care. It's not affecting me, so I don't care. Which you shouldn't care. Bring that back later. But the reason I bring this up is because in doing so, it allows thousands of people to attack an individual or a group or a company without having to face any consequence or any real physical emotional, mental toll on themselves. Because all it takes is a couple of clicks and then there you go. It's an attack that will be there forever. As opposed to the thing you described, actually physically going there, while that shouldn't occur, it's going to sound really weird, but that has more value as an attack because it demonstrated how frustrated they were that they physically had to go there. That's why I would say that typically only occurs with like really high profile individuals.
What often happens with things like that is the people going there are not the people that initially created these posts. They're high profile people telling their followers to go after other high profile people, or not high profile people. Like you see this with employees at businesses who do something to upset the business person, and then all of a sudden they're fired and their address is published online because one higher up decided, I can do this. And then all of a sudden they're being harassed just for walking outside.
So I was mistaken then. It's the moth effect again. That rhymed. 10 points. Alright, yeah. Then I retract my statement about the different values of it, but I think the point still stands. If someone is to take physical action and go do something that they truly believe in, and it requires some form of toll upon them, that demonstrates that they are much more involved in it than simply clicking a button
The big difference here is that if you're willing to go to someone's house and threaten them physically, even if you're only doing it because some celebrity influencer suggested that it might be a good idea, you are still willing, as ignorant as it may be, to face the consequences of what you're doing. Whereas if you are silently posting from social media that someone should be attacked, there's no accountability there.
And to make a fun allusion here, when someone is scrolling through their feeds and they're seeing each one of these causes to run with, it's in effect an advertisement and a now this of causes. In that one by one you're like, okay, if it was one button, I'm sure they would make it one button, because then you could click it and there you go, you're done. Swipe to the next one, click it, now you're done. Swipe to the next one, click it, you're done. And it turns into shopping in a way.
Shopping for a cause.
Yeah, honestly, and shopping for a cause you don't even fully appreciate. It's the notion of buying something online as an impulse buy, and then getting it 3 months later and asking, why did I ever buy this?
That's why in a lot of these organizations, it's never told to you directly what they actually stand for, what their specific goals are. It's so much more often, here is this one encompassing thing that we stand for. It's always something that no one would disagree with.
An absolutism.
Yeah.
Because what that does is it allows the viewers to interpret it and generalize it as much as they want. And in effect, come up with their own ideas of it and force an alignment. Because as soon as someone wants to be part of something, particularly when something becomes trendy, being part of a cause becomes trendy, it's very easy to want to join it because your friends are joining it. And there's something to be said about conformity here, when I always hate that if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you too? And I always retort it with, if everyone didn't wear clothes to work, would you too? Because I hate that. Anyways, I got off the track there. But...
oh my.
Yeah. I always retort because they always go, wait, what? Because they never expect it. But the reason I use that as an example is to say that when it's trendy to do it, a lot of people will simply join the organization, support the organization, buy products with the name of the organization, and wear them gleefully without even necessarily knowing what it stands for, simply because the name is trendy. It'd be like buying Nike shoes and gladly wearing the shoes with the logo all plastered over it, while Nike fictionally supported animal abuse.
I mean,
and just like either not knowing that or forgetting that or just never having read it. And I mean, some corporations are like that.
so while we were on that fun little tangent right there, I got an idea of something else we could talk about, and I'm gonna leave it up to you as to whether we go into this.
No.
It was. I'm going to ignore that. It was somewhat alluded to the idea of, or maybe it wasn't. I don't know what made me think of it, but this is somewhat topical, so that's why you might not want to discuss it. But the idea of social media censorship, in that it's not really censorship. You'll have to inform me on the definition of censorship, but does it have to be governmental?
No.
Okay.
No. So the root of the issue here, and the way I truthfully haven't come to a complete position on where I stand on it. The reason this isn't in contention so much, particularly in the United States, is because, of course, we have the First Amendment rights of free speech. And we've discussed before and for you as an example, we've discussed before the God-given rights issues.
Yeah.
And how those relate to infringing upon other rights. Sorry, listeners, I can't explain it to you because someone will get mad at me. But the reason this is an issue is because when everyone is saying they want to have their First Amendment rights, that's fine, and that does apply to the government and should apply to the government. This is why the conformity forced upon the 1950s by McCarthy was a bad thing, because it very evidently violated the First Amendment right. However, this is where the fine print always comes in. The fine print no one ever reads of social media sites. In that some of those sites have clauses in which they reserve the right to restrict information.
Yes.
Which is then where you get into the question of, can the government mandate that? Because there was, I believe it was Article 13 of the EU had an issue where they've made it legal. They made sites liable for the content that was on it.
Yeah.
Which was a huge issue because the people were worried about losing access to the sites and losing the things they like to do on the sites because the company was worried about the image portrayed by that. Mm-hmm. Because prior to that, suing and lawsuits were entirely independent.
This is going on in this country too. These organizations can fall into one of two categories. They're either publishers and therefore are free to curate whatever content they can, throw out whatever content they want from their sites, and they're not liable for that. And then there are platforms where ideally you have anyone posting whatever, but there are things that these platforms can throw out, and this is meant to be things like
inappropriate things and such,
violence, pornography, the obvious stuff.
Right.
But in the law, I think it says, or otherwise harmful.
Mm-hmm. And that is the interpretive part.
That is left intentionally vague. Mm-hmm. So the debate right now is if a social media site is throwing out ideas that they don't like, should they then be put into the category of publisher? and that category, there's like different restrictions on them where they are held accountable for everything that's on their site.
So
that's the issue right now.
What then is the precise definition of publisher? Is a publisher an organization that has a clear position?
I think it would just be
because
being responsible for all the any content that is posted on your site. I can do a quick.
The reason I try to
search.
clarify this is because if it is the case where they have a clear position, then yes, any site that's modifying anything beyond the clearly vulgar and universally acceptable as vulgar must have an agenda, or not necessarily an agenda, but at least a position upon which they make those decisions, because how else are you supposed to make the decision of value and appropriateness if it's not necessarily objective as something such as a murder video or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. I did not know there was a distinction there.
Yes, and it's legal. Okay, so I found something. A publisher is a company that controls what information is produced using its publication. A platform is a vehicle generally on the internet which can be used by the general public and on which information is not filtered or controlled. Online platforms as they currently exist are granted this protection as a platform instead of a publisher through CDA 230, which I presume is a law.
Yeah.
Communications Act of 1934.
Which is they're not liable for what's on their site.
Yes.
Which is good in that it allows, and that's important. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. So the important difference there is that while the publisher didn't precisely say it had controlled the media, the platform, per the legal definition, made a point of saying it was uncontrolled and unrestricted and unfiltered. And obviously there's the things that fall under the Communications Act of completely vulgar, which should be removed because we universally agree upon that. But is by that very definition, as soon as you get into removing anything and changing anything that isn't directly associated with that, or even filtering things and presenting them in a way that isn't fair,
then are you still a platform?
By that definition, by complete reason, no.
Yeah.
No. Obviously, there could be some argument there about the value of certain positions, and if a position is providing false information, is that false information vulgar, or is it allowed to survive as the Flat Earth website is allowed to survive on the internet?
And this is where you get into more of an argument of principle, whereas someone who supports free speech, like probably
Everyone.
Yeah. Everyone says they do. Everyone wants to be able to say what they want, but not everyone wants to.
Hey, stop! Stop! I don't want to hear you talk.
Yeah, that.
Right,
most people would say that
Sorry, that felt really rude. I'm sorry.
In open discourse, in the free exchange of ideas, the best ideas will naturally rise to the top. Now, this is assuming idealism and does not account for emotion.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. He was waving his arms frantically at me and like brushing his hair, trying to ensure
distract you,
trying to make sure that I got around to what he wanted me to say.
Now that's manipulation if I've ever seen it. But yes, definitely, in an ideal world, the best argumentative ideas would filter the top, because any reasonable individual would say, obviously, not to the other issues if they're not argumentable, or reasoned, rather. However, in the modern day, it is the case where the most topical, the most entertaining, and the most sensational. Thank you. Those are what rise to the top, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why sites like Twitter, Instagram, even Facebook, God so help me, all of them filter down to clickbait. Because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
How else are you supposed to keep a voice if not the loudest voice?
Mm-hmm.
To take a side point here, I will say what's fascinating is the increasing number of online, particularly YouTube, educational channels. And I was bringing it up as a opposing position to what I just said. Except I ask, what are the biggest channels of those?
Entertaining ones.
Yes. This is why individuals like Vsauce, who creates like awesome stuff and really interesting things to watch.
But it's just that interesting.
It's because it's interesting.
It gets you.
It certainly is educating.
If we're being generous, it gets you to think about a lot of things.
Which is important.
Yes.
Which is very important because there's a plethora of online education videos that your teachers will randomly use in class and you'll fall asleep during because they're not entertaining. But the reason these ones become popular is because something about them catches you, and either that you find learning it entertaining or interesting at least enough to stay behind, or it's colorful enough to keep your eyes watching.
I would counter your previous point of emotion and sensation rising to the top, not with educational materials on YouTube, but with podcasts. Which are rising in popularity, which now
even among podcasts
there's a lot. I haven't seen enough of them to judge them as a whole, but it seems like a pretty hard medium to make primarily entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say by definition it must be entertaining because it's the medium it's presented through. But entertaining doesn't necessarily mean it can't be educational. And
the entertainment in podcast, it seems to come from the people presenting the information, not from some externally, like, I don't know what I'm trying.
An external part of the medium causing it.
Yeah, it seems like that's an inevitability because you're dealing with humans.
Well, when listening to a podcast, you have the logo to look at, and most logos tend to be pretty downplayed. So what are you left with but witty characters to listen to?
Yeah.
Voices. Which...
It does... I mean, some of them... A lot of podcasts have video as well, but...
We briefly did. We kind of do.
What?
We kind of have video.
How?
In that we change the screen sometimes. Yes, it's a thrilling video to watch when the screen changes thrice every hour. It's a total frame rate of 0.1 per...
Even when it is visuals, it's usually just people talking to each other. So it does kind of remove the visual aspect of tugging on your emotions or you needing to find something visually entertaining.
There's two parts here. This is why podcasts are superior in every way, because they force you, when thinking, to listen to words. Because I can't flash up any imagery. Well, I mean, we can if we really want to, but we try not to avoid such that. In that we don't want the video to be the focus. We want the words, the ideas to be the focus. Furthermore, we don't want our ideas to be the focus, but we want the listener, yes, you, to be thinking about what they can do and how it applies to them. This is why most often when you ask someone if they like podcasts, many of them will say no, because they can't just sit there and listen. And I myself, when I listen to podcasts, I do things visually entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
However, while I don't think you should be doing 6 things at once, because then obviously it's not anything to you, it's entirely just a monotone voice in the background.
Yeah.
I do certainly think it's acceptable with monotonous things to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My best example is when I'm working on notating the parts for my music. I do it then, because that's a 4-hour project of just click, drag that there, move it over there, make sure that looks right. Maybe listen to it once or twice for entertainment, but that's it. And that's the best time that I do it, because then I'm actively doing something with my hands, so that I'm working and producing something and feel valued after completing such a thing. But at the same time, I'm engaging in a discussion with myself from the stimulus that is the speakers.
A lot of people listen to podcasts in the car, commuting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I've done it. It's very nice to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's some stuff to be said about accident rates, but it's not nearly as bad as you think it is.
It's not as bad as texting or something.
No. There was a really great study I actually read once, in that because podcast, while you're actively engaging in the conversation, in that you're thinking about it and like pondering what they're talking about, because you're not having to respond as if you were on a phone call, even a phone call, hands-free phone call, you're actually almost completely attentive, because when your eyes need more attention on the road, you can dissimulate from the recording entirely.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, you have people like, oh, let me go back because I didn't miss that last part, because their focus and their cognition needs it for something else.
Yeah.
As opposed to a phone call where you risk social breakdown if you I missed that entire conversation, which I've done before, and it's kind of awkward. Actually, I've done that many times with you.
I talk on the phone in the car.
And it's not
fun.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's not that much different than talking to a person sitting in the passenger seat in your car.
It's not at all different. And if you had it in your hand, yeah, that's an issue because you're less with hands on the wheel. But if someone's talking with you, it's not as bad as a lot of people think it is. Texting's bad because eyes off the road. But as long as your eyes are on the road, at least it's safer.
There might be something to be said about talking on the phone, but like someone might feel insulted, like, oh, you're driving while you're talking to me. But like, driving is something you kind of have to do sometimes to get from place to place.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't say that if they were in the car, so.
If I can avoid it, I try to avoid calling individuals while driving, just to eliminate that factor, particularly because I'm younger. But once you're past a good amount of driving practice, and
I don't crash. I don't drive poorly.
Thanks, Luke. I know you don't. He just drives scarily over hills.
I might.
Jeep. That was the most terrifying experience when Luke went over a hill with me in the car.
I enjoy my driving. I do not drive recklessly.
You don't. He actually drives much safer than I do, which is kind of baffling.
Okay, when you start thinking about something besides the road, you unconsciously slow down.
I do.
Or if you don't know where you are, you'll like forget to drive.
Okay. The reason I do the slowdown is because of the moving cognition, and that sounds really smart for saying that I have to focus on something else, in that I need to have the attention on the directions, the instructions Luke is telling me in a loud car, or knowing where I am. And even cases where like I'm listening to music and getting too into it sometimes, which you've experienced.
Yeah.
It is definitely subconscious, but it's probably just an innate situation where I drive slower in order to facilitate the safety of it in my mind. And so because I don't drive nearly as fast as I probably should, even at speed limits. So I'm not nearly as comfortable, probably, as you are. So that my comfortable space when having noise in the car is much slower than yours.
I found that I have the opposite problem. Like, even like, I was walking with someone one time, and it the conversation kept getting better and better, and I found myself walking much faster. And the person's like, "You do that when you drive too." So it's not something I notice, but every once in a while I'll be engaged in something, and then I look up and, oh, I'm going 80 miles an hour.
Yeah. Well, and for you, it's much more autonomous than it is for me already. And you're what, a year ahead of me driving? Mm-hmm. And so it's a very clear, quick, exponential getting used to it. But in that case, it's just because it goes on autopilot and your exhilaration gets you into something, either a conversation or music, and it's dangerous.
I love driving.
But it's
I'm
fine.
trying, I wish I could fake being 18 so I could work DoorDash right now, because I think that would be a good job for me, considering you can't work in somewhere. You can't
go anywhere right now.
But you can drive around.
We can do that. You want to go for a drive?
I'd love to.
I have a new CD we can play.
Very good. The last 10 minutes of this hasn't been the podcast. It's just been us talking.
It's just been us here. I'm fine with it. It's interesting. It's kind of loosely. No, it's not.
No, it's not. It's about driving.
I was gonna make some connection to podcasts, but I was like, oh yeah, the topic's social media. So remember, kids, don't sell your soul. Say nice things on social media.
Better yet, say
nothing.
Yes.
Just don't.
Don't say things on social media. I use social media for... What do I use social media for? Sharing things that have to do with music.
He usually drops some big proposition, some big
oh yeah,
axiom or something.
Sometimes on my story, I'll post some thing that doesn't belong on an Instagram story, and 80 people will read it, or 80 people will see it, but no one will have actually read it. Mm-hmm. Except Andrew.
They're fun to read. They're a lot of fun to read.
Except Andrew, because
I never respond to them because I'm not prepared to respond to them in that moment.
You should sometime. That's why I put them there. I'm trying to spark thinking and conversation.
But you need other people, Luke. It can't be me forever. I can't handhold you through this. Because I don't know where I'm going either.
Where are these other people?
I don't know.
No one else responds either.
We'll get better friends.
You're assuming that the people I'm friends with on social media are my friends.
We didn't even talk about that.
No, we didn't.
Put
the
screen back up.
Oh, we've done this twice in a row. Main episode. There we go.
This happens a lot, actually.
Okay. So
he just flipped over his paper and went from 4 things to an entire page of notes. All right, go ahead.
I wanted to bring it all back around to, and this doesn't have a whole lot to do with social media, but the idea that you value quality over quantity in your relationships, especially those that are most meaningful. And I take the word meaningful to mean a very specific thing in this instance, and I'm going to define that as someone whose feelings you care about to the point where their feelings can affect your own. Mm-hmm. And that is, if you think about it, that is a very small group of people, as it should be. Mm-hmm. Because
I can name maybe 5.
Mm-hmm. And outside of that group, almost everyone cares about how you act as opposed to how you feel. Mm-hmm. They care about your behavior.
Yes.
And that is why it's so dangerous to allow yourself to be
anything but what they think you are.
Well, I was going to say allow yourself to be dictated by your emotions. Especially outside of that group of people. Because for one, most people don't care. Nor should they, because that doesn't affect them. But if you're behaving in a way that manifests all of the negative things you have going on, that's only going to hurt anyone who you force to experience that.
Yes,
and this is where I'll let you talk in a second, but
it's fun watching this. Go ahead.
This is where we get back to social media, where that doesn't happen on social media. Everything is dictated by emotion. Everything is making as many people as possible see this thing that I want them to see. That thing often being rooted in emotion.
So many individuals have espoused to me that all they want in life is a fulfilling relationship or someone to cuddle with. And sure, that sounds great, but an equal number of those individuals and the same individuals who say that, I can fairly say the vast majority of them will never achieve that. Because while they may want that, and while we all may want a deep, intimate, consummate relationship like that, when you actively surround yourself with an increasing number of hollow friendships and simple behavior-based groups, you never achieve that deep connection with anyone. And how are you... You'll never come across an individual who will immediately have a deep regard for you. That doesn't happen. It can take years, it can take decades, it can take a lifetime to really fully build that relationship. And truth be told, it really should take the whole lifetime, in that it's, yes, you can have that deep connection now, but this is why we all love old married couples so much, through their long time garnered marriage, they've gotten happier and happier and found themselves more in each other.
Was it Storge? The love language?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes.
Probably. Episode 7? 7.
You know these much better than I do. And that's why I find it really upsetting, is because, and this is going to sound very arrogant, but when a lot of people ask me about, like, how am I supposed to get to that position, or I try to describe, as we've described many times here, how to build good relationships like that, my common answer is just do it. Just put the time into it. Because it's not a go buy it on Amazon thing. It's not an instantaneous thing. And you can certainly... It's not a
pay $59.99 to take my class in how to be charismatic, how to be chick magnet 5,000.
You want to be charismatic, you want to be a chick magnet, just do it. Just better yourself and it will work. That's exactly what I did, and somehow I got a lot of respect and I'm okay with it. And truth be told, what's fascinating, and this... Oh God, I sound really arrogant today, I'm sorry. But to again sound...
intellectually superior.
To again sound intellectually and socially superior to all of our listeners, and you, my friend. I would like to point out, like... It's come to my attention that within our school and the group of friends I surround myself with, and particularly the band program Luke and I are in, I have apparently garnered an immense amount of respect from a lot of people and admiration, which, truth be told, was never the point. And I didn't realize until, honestly, a couple weeks ago, like, fully. And that's because it wasn't my job. It wasn't my focus. A lot of my things were very self-centered. A lot of my goals were, what do I want to achieve and what makes me happy. But that's exactly it. What makes you happy will naturally cause that. Because if someone sees you,
You're getting into some dicey territory that I might have to start disagreeing with.
there's a psych part here we're going to talk about. Okay. If you are happy in what you're doing, and you're fulfilled in what you're doing, and you find purpose in what you're doing.
There you go.
And you
hate the word happiness.
If you feel like you're growing as an individual, you don't even have to necessarily be happy, truth be told. I've mentioned it a couple times before, but when I began my journey, so to speak, of introspection, that was probably one of the most difficult portions of my life that I've come to experience so far. Entirely that it was an immense pressure mentally, socially, and academically. It could not have occurred at a worse time in my life so far. But
mine was a pretty good time.
Yours was fine.
Because nothing was going on.
Yours was fine. But looking back on those 3 months or so, I certainly was not happy during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the reason I persisted was because I would not let myself cease.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's important, is so many individuals quit immediately and go with well, I can't do it, so I can't do it. Folks, no one knows how to do anything. Humans have been making this up for the past 2 centuries. Well, past 2 millennia. And it's a matter, the individuals that we remember the most are those who achieve things. And how do they achieve things? For probably the best phrase is blunt forcing it and making it happen. And why do we respect them the most? Because they made it happen. Mary Curie, a female radiologist from the 19th and early 20th century, was incredibly important to the science of radiology, and basically discovered radiation and got a pretty sick reckoning when she died because of her own experiments. She didn't know about radiation, studied it, and then died to it because she didn't know it existed yet.
Let's just appreciate sick reckoning.
That's a t-shirt, Nord. But the reason we appreciate her so much is because she blunt forced her way into the world. She was, of course, a woman, and she was not allowed to study at the Polish school, so she quite literally went out of the country to find education and forced her way into academia and worked as hard as she could until she was the top of her class and became a Nobel Prize winning individual. And in fact, when she won the prize, it was originally gifted to her and her husband.
Yeah. Yep.
And they made actually her husband and her made a point of refusing the prize unless it was to her for her achievements, because the husband did a lot, but that was the purpose of it. It was that she was making her own mark on the world and doing the things that were challenging at the time, even if she found unhappiness in doing some of them. She found it upsetting and disheartening. But the disheartening events are what bring us into reality and what teach us how we value things. And once you know your values, you're all set to do everything. And to bring this all around, don't post stupid things on social media. Just don't. No one cares. And
do what I do. Stop. Type out what you need to say. Read through it. Realize most of what you said was stupid. Write it again, void of emotion, with big words. Then go to a thesaurus.
Thesaurus?
Find more big words that you didn't know before. Throw them in for good measure. And then send it to your best friend, Andrew.
This is exactly what happens in a step-by-step process. Pretty much every couple weeks. Oh, this is why I love you, man. I feel you. Oh. But yes, that is exactly what you should do, because it is... a number of occasions I have read these messages he has sent me, had to take a couple days, if not a couple months, to really comprehend them. and then provide an answer that was on a significantly lower level than what he was going for. But he's challenging me. I try to challenge him. He challenges those who follow him and those who actually actively read his stuff. And I would say it's no coincidence that the individuals who read the things you post, those large blocks of text, academic blocks of text, the individuals who read those are the real friends you've got.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say they should respond, but I don't. Sorry.
I'm not sure who reads them, Mac. I'm not sure who actually reads them.
And you will never know unless they start talking to you. Our editor reads them. But the reason I say that is the individual at least demonstrating a curiosity in you, if not a regard and an admiration for you. Because at that point, they care enough to stop what they're doing, because who really watches stories except through them?
Yeah.
Don't we all just tap through them, right?
Yeah.
But if you stop and pause and read it, that demonstrates that you care about that person. And like you were saying earlier, your closest friends are the individuals whose emotions affect you and your emotions affect them. Just as your
and
active attention and writing something like that catches their attention as well.
And that's why maybe I wrote this semi-academic block of text, but if someone starts having a conversation with me, then it might get into some deeper, more personal, dare I say, emotional territory.
Gasp.
But the reason I do all of this, I've loved these last few minutes because they've been so focused on me.
All right, I'm gonna go now.
Oh, you had your
I had my
time.
spiel. It's your turn.
But as the reason I do this is, as the wise Joseph Kozar once said, emotion is temporary, rhetoric is forever. And I think it's important to add actions are forever. Maybe even more permanent than rhetoric. And would you say, I think this is a good place to close out today's episode.
We went off on an immense tangent and started talking about values and relationships again, but I think it ties together, kind of.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We always appreciate those of you who stay around. That means, like we were talking about, you care about us and you care about our thoughts and opinions at least enough to be entertained by them.
And maybe even our feelings.
No one cares about your feelings, Luke.
Oh.
That was cold. I'm sorry. Gosh. Anyways, if you haven't already, check out the merch. It's pretty cool.
Check out our Instagram page.
It's okay.
Yeah,
we also have Twitter, which no one follows, so it's pretty bad. But yes, we do.
Oh,
No
I don't have Twitter. That's why I didn't know about it.
I don't even follow it. It's pretty bad.
I don't have Twitter. I'm sure I'd be much less unhappy, more or less unhappy, if I had Twitter. Much more less unhappy. We'll go with that one.
Much more less unhappy if
Wait,
Twitter.
no.
What?
No, much less.
Much less more unhappy.
Much less unhappy. Much less.
Much less more unhappy.
My name's Luke. He's Andrew. This is